everybody? Dr. Trevor Wilkins here, known as the Angry Viking Therapist. And if you're new here to the channel, one of the things that I specialize in is post-traumatic stress disorder. I know we're calling it different things now in the world, like post-traumatic stress injury, post-traumatic injury, but the diagnostic part of it is post-traumatic stress disorder. So I want to tell you a little bit about what actually happens in the brain. This isn't just a thinking kind of disorder that you just think your way out of. When you deal with chronic or acute trauma, you deal with changes in the brain system. I want to tell you about a couple of those. Hippocampal changes. Let me read this to you. The hippocampus, a region crucial for memory formation and recall, can be significantly affected by this PTSD. Studies show that PTSD can lead to a reduction in the volume of the hippocampus. Reduction in the volume, the size, will actually change in size. We've seen it on brain scans. And the shrinkage may continue in difficulties in forming new memories and recalling past events, potentially leading to memory gaps or an impaired ability to encode new information. You have no idea how many people come into my office or catch up with me online for either a one-on-one session or looking for some advice or have some questions, and they tell me that they feel like they have dementia. They feel like they have memory problems. They feel like they can't remember anything. Now, we can make jokes all day long about whether we listen to our spouses very well or not. But the reality is that PTSD actually changes the hippocampus in the brain. It will make it shrink. If another part of your body shrank, you'd think that something was wrong with you. If you had one leg shorter than the other all of a sudden, it actually changes your brain. Of course you have trouble remembering things. This is twofold. One is this hippocampus. It shrinks. This is an area known for recalling information. The other part of this that I think also comes from the biological part of it, rather, is that trauma makes other things irrelevant. Do you really think that I care whether the water bill was paid this month when I just dealt with a terrible scene? Of course it's important. Of course we can't use it as an excuse. But we also have biological changes in our brain. The hippocampus actually shrinks. Here's another one. Amygdala reactivity. The amygdala, key in processing emotions like fear and anxiety, becomes hyperactive in PTSD. Sound familiar? This heightened state can lead to an exaggerated stress response to triggers that are reminiscent of the traumatic event itself. The trauma is happening now. It can also contribute to heightened vigilance and anxiety affecting day-to-day functioning. I always say that hypervigilance is mentally and physically exhausting. So many people come to my office talking about feeling exhausted all the time, feeling lazy, feeling overreactive, feeling hyperreactive. There's nothing wrong with vigilance. I'm still to this day, even though I'm not in anymore, as a 15-year former law enforcement officer, and the years before that as a dispatcher, EMT, and firefighter, I'm still vigilant. I still know my surroundings. I still know what's going on around me. I still protect myself. You can take that however you want. We're not going to talk about it on YouTube, so they don't kick me off. Right? I still train with that protection. I still have my family ready in case there's an emergency. I still know what's going on around me at all times, whether I'm driving or in a public place. I'm still vigilant. There's nothing wrong with vigilance. So as you're complaining about the fact that you don't like to sit with your back to the door, it's fine. It's vigilant. It's hypervigilance that's causing you a problem. Just like this stuff I wrote down and wanted to read to you articulately is that, just like it said, is it becomes a problem. It's almost as if the trauma is happening now. The trauma feels real. You know, prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, knows this is in the past. This is something that happened before. Yes, this is a reminder of it, and that stinks. But part of your brain, this amygdala, actually can go into that fight or flight mode for what feels like no reason at all. There is a reason. Let me give you another thing PTSD does. Prefrontal cortex functioning problems. That prefrontal cortex, it's involved in executive functions like decision-making, fairly important, planning and inhibiting inappropriate behaviors, can be dysregulated in PTSD. The dysregulation might manifest as difficulties in concentrating, making decisions, or planning, which might mistakenly be perceived as laziness. Now, if we're being lazy, we got to fix that. That's a whole different discussion. Maybe I'll make another video about getting your ass off the couch. But what can be felt or perceived as laziness, maybe it's not. Maybe we're having trouble making decisions. Maybe we're having trouble actually getting the motivation and the decision-making to go do things or take care of things. That's why one of the reasons families fall apart because of PTSD. It's one of the reasons that people come in and talk about feeling lazy, like they're not like they used to be. They don't feel the same that they used to be. There's brain changes here, folks. We're not going to let you off the hook and just be lazy and blame it on things like PTSD. But it turns out there's some biological issues here. Inappropriate behaviors, inhibition. Inappropriate behaviors. Sometimes we're not using our prefrontal cortex after PTSD, whether it be chronic stress, acute stress, chronic trauma, acute trauma, big T trauma, little t trauma, things I've talked about before. It's inhibiting our ability to make good decisions and stay out of trouble. Again, never an excuse. But you don't think I was making bad decisions when I was at my worst, those dark years that I talk about in other videos? Can't use as an excuse. Have to deal with the choices that I made. But it turns out your prefrontal cortex, what I like to call the thinking brain, the less emotional brain, the ones that makes decisions based on the past and what will happen in the future, evidence-based decisions, turns out it's changing as well. If you're still trying to use it as an excuse, you're on the wrong video. But it turns out PTSD from trauma will cause changes in the brain. This isn't just a thinking problem. We've got a lot of things we got to work on. The biology, the thinking through things, your filter. This is exactly what I created my program for. If this sounds like something you need help with, please, theangryvikingtherapist.com. I want to help you out. If I'm not the right person, I'll direct you to somebody that is. I know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea when it comes to therapy. Maybe a little too forward and aggressive and tell you to get your crap together. Maybe that's what you need. Please reach out.